Also, Israel has, this is sourced by the New York Times, Israeli ground forces passed the demilitarized zone and crossed into Syrian territory for the first time since 1973, Israeli officials say, according to the New York Times. Israeli ground forces advanced beyond the demilitarized zone on the Syria-Israel border over the weekend, marking their first overt entry into Syrian territory since the 1973 October War, according to two Israeli officials speaking anonymously to discuss sensitive developments. The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power and out of the country, prompting neighboring states to brace for more regional instability created by the southern fall and fight. Now, what I don't understand is Israel has collaborated on that same border with al-Nusra in the past, like directly, something that Loner Box and all those other losers don't know about, which is why they were criticizing me. What was the border scuffle that they had? Or not scuffle, but like Israel al-Nusra collaboration. Let's see. I mean, this is from Al Monitor. This was the Israel and Jabhat al-Nusra coordinating on attacks in Syria. Israel has arrested a Syrian Druze man who documented contact between Israel and the al-Nusra front. Israel offered medical help to fighters as well. So why am I mentioning this? They have also given weapons. IDF chief finally acknowledges that Israel supplied weapons to Syrian rebels. Outgoing IDF chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot this weekend acknowledged for the first time that Israel has indeed provided weaponry to Syrian rebel groups in the Golan Heights during the country's 7-year civil war. Until Sunday, Israel would say officially only that it had given humanitarian aid to Syrian opposition groups across the border, while denying or refusing to comment on reports that it had supplied them with arms as well. So what's really interesting about this is, well, they have collaborated with al-Nusra in the past. They have collaborated with, like, you know, HSD style groups. Okay, maybe not directly with HSD, but I would assume, or I mean, HTS. But what I don't understand is why, if they have collaborated with al-Nusra, and they're saying Israel Prime Minister helped topple Assad, but it wasn't planned. It just happened to be, kismet. Then why are they invading Syria? Why are they going further into Syria? The Israeli deployment came amid a successful push by rebel groups in Syria to drive President Bashar al-Assad out of power. Why are they doing that? If they were so worried about, the groups that come after, this is the peak. Groups that Israel has worked with, successfully collaborated with openly. They are now in charge of large swaths of the Syrian lands. So why is it that Israel now has additional security concerns? It's very interesting. One statement, two languages. There's one statement, there's one sentence that's pretty important that Netanyahu says only in English, not at all in Hebrew, about the presence of IDF in the buffer zone. This is a temporary defense position until a sustainable arrangement is found. Okay, I can't speak Hebrew, so I don't know.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace.
Interesting.
Israel, which borders Syria, it has deployed additional forces to the occupied Golan.
I just don't personally understand why there would be any additional temporary threats to Israeli sovereignty and security if the guys that they have in the past aligned with are now in control and Assad is gone. I thought Assad was the dangerous threat to Israel's sovereignty and security. And yet, for some reason, Israel's temporary security concerns have once again reared its ugly head. Israel always has temporary security concerns. Israel always has a right to defend itself. This is how Israel basically traffics its own expansionist policies. And that's precisely what's happening here. Anyway, from what I understand, here is obviously our Yemen researcher, Alden Markey. I don't know if he's in the chat right now. He says, now that Assad's government has officially collapsed and he has fled Syria, Yemen can now finally address in public what happened to its Syrian embassy. Assad closed the pro-Ansar Allah embassy in Damascus in October 2023 in exchange for rapprochement with Saudi Arabia. The entire embassy staff was kicked out and the embassy premises and promptly replaced with stooges of the pro-Saudi Yemeni regime in exile. I happen to speak very cordially with both of the two Yemeni ambassadors before Assad turned everything to shit. The October 2023 closure was very embarrassing and bewildering. There was no prior notice, nothing. What? Syrian analyst on Israel's invasion of the north? Okay, that's Syrian girl, and she is not a quote-unquote Syrian analyst. There are a lot of people who aren't just Syrian analysts. There are definitely a lot of people who are propagandists, sometimes anti-Semitic, and also pro-Assad at the same time. I would not go there for analysis. So ridiculous overall. If you care about sources from the Syrian rebels on the ground, let me tell you that their help was a drop in the sea. Your ideas is true that Israel really did want to topple Assad. We would have seen anti-air support and constant PR, but trust me, Israel loves Assad far more than everyone else. So this is also an interesting take as well. And I don't have like a fully fleshed out position on this. I have heard people say this. But I think the reality of the matter is Assad, while incompetent, was still very much a part of the supply chain for Iran, for the axis of resistance in the region. Assad also relied on Hezbollah for defending its position. So I think while he wasn't necessarily pro-Palestinian emancipation, especially the direct issues that the Palestinians had, that Hamas specifically had with the Assad regime, and early on Hamas's support for the revolution, I think caused a lot of disagreements and genuine, like a real issue for Assad in general. So while they were still in alignment due to Iran basically utilizing Syria as a way to bring in weapons into the region, they weren't like a major power player. He compromised for literally all sides just for the sole purpose of staying in power. He made so many promises to Israel as we saw them give intel on Iran. This is what the Iranian government is saying as well. They're saying that like Assad was potentially giving Iranian positions away, intel away to Israel. I mean, I don't know. I get it. I mean, he was a fucking major opportunist and really bad. Yemeni officials articulating frustrations that they have with the Syrian government Assad, the most major one being that they have requested the Syria assist in opening a front in the occupied Golan Heights against Israel, and each time the Syrians refused. Yeah. The wider understanding in the region is that any government in power in the Middle East in some way benefits the American interest and by extension Israel's. Maybe not directly, but some to an extent. And yes, that includes Iran. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, Assad is he doesn't always consistently play ball in the same way that like Gulf states do. And even then, Gulf states don't always consistently play ball in the way that America wants, which is why Israel has to be there. So if you don't consistently play ball with America and Israel, then you will get toppled inevitably, especially if you already are a brutal tyrant. And due to your brutality, there is a very valid reason for people that want to topple you. America will always go in and use that to their advantage. And that's it.
And during the last year is understood to have carried out several airstrikes on groups which support Hamas and Hezbollah as its wars in Gaza and then Lebanon were underway. The Israeli military is also reported to have struck Syrian military compounds near Damascus early today, including weapons depots. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted these comments on the fall of the Assad regime in Syria to his social media accounts.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran.
I also do hate that he's so happy about this. It does benefit him. Instability in the axis of resistance supply chain, regardless of Assad's like lack of interest in helping Palestinians, instability in the axis of resistance supply chain is good for Israel. So for him, this is fantastic. They've crippled Hezbollah's leadership. They've bombed every Shia village in southern Lebanon. So now the Lebanese economy is already destroyed, and now they have to do a period of reconstruction to make sure that people can still survive in that area. And now the last vector of instability, a massive country in the region that was utilized as a part of the Iranian supply chain, is no longer controlled by a guy who is somewhat unstable from his perspective.
Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found.
Soon before Erdogan's assault in Syria, Netanyahu literally threatened Assad and his beast, saying he's playing with fire. Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are this, bro. This. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a servant of Western interests. It does not matter that he plays both sides. It does not matter that he has trade relations with Russia. It Doesn't matter that he has trade relations with China. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees the second largest military in NATO. Recep Tayyip Erdogan oversees America's nuclear arsenal in the Incirlik base. Anyone that tries to tell you that Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Benjamin Netanyahu are not directly aligned, only hear what he has to say in public, and he has all the smoke for Israel in public. He always says, like, fuck you, Israel. You are Netanyahu. He says a number of different things. And yet, the oil and gas that Israel needs to power its energy grid, I believe around 30% of it still comes through Azerbaijan, through Turkish ports, directly into Israeli ports, or directly through pipelines. Israel uses a radar in Turkey to protect the sky. That too. Turkey has also always trained Israeli Air Force fighters. This is service level conspiratory thinking. Nothing I said is service level conspiratory thinking. You're coping because you want Erdogan to be this, liberator in the region. You want to fantasize that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is going to, I guess, like restore the Ottoman Caliphate to its glory or some shit, okay? That he cares about the Ummah. Turkey and Israel are at odds? No, they're not. Turkey and Israel have never been at odds, and they will never be at odds. No, Recep Tayyip Erdogan is simply responding to the pressure, the real pressure of the Turkish population. The Turkish population hates Israel, whether they are Islamists themselves, which, are important to Recep Tayyip Erdogan's winning coalition, okay, of voters, or whether they are, people that are interested in the emancipation of Palestinians. Means that there are a shit ton of people in Turkey that want Palestine to be free. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has to respond to these demands because, after all, while he is authoritarian, there is still some semblance of democracy in Turkey, and that's precisely what's happening here. No matter who's in charge, as long as Turkey is a NATO nation, it will always be pro-America, and obviously America's major interests in the region are to defend Israel unconditionally. But this is very beneficial for Erdogan in general. Not only does he get to enjoy the freedom, he gets to, bully like European allies every now and then. And also simultaneously, he gets to pummel Kurdish forces in northern Syria and maintain control over big parts of Syria. And that benefit is now playing itself out in the way that the Assad regime was toppled by Turkish-backed forces. So there it is. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has played both sides, and he has ultimately come out on top.
Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, let me go now to Charles Lister, who is in Doha. Sorry, we're going to go to our guest in a moment. First of all, let's hear from John Donaldson, who's got this.
Charles Lister is the guy that's like moderate jihadis guy. I mean, his analysis on Palestine is really good, but on Syria, he's a little bit, I don't know. It's funny to see cabinet ministers saying this occupied region is a security belt from Syria to the Golan Heights because the whole justification for occupying it, yeah, exactly. The whole justification for occupying and annexing the Golan Heights is that Golan Heights is a security belt for northern Israel. We're doing security belt inception. No, it's the same tactic. You go in, you say we have real security concerns. We have people living there. We have real security concerns. We have to push the boundary. Then you annex that boundary that you pushed. Then you repopulate that area. You repopulate the area with more settlers. Then now you have security concerns. You have to expand further. In the words of that other guy who wrote the Times of Israel article before they took it down, Lebensraum. That was literally the argument that the dude was making. Amid the chaos, the Israeli Air Force carried out numerous strikes in Syria today, taking out weaponry Israel fears could fall in the hands of hostile forces. According to the reports in Syria, strikes earlier targeted ammunition and weapons depots at the Kalkala Air Base in Suwaida, several sites in the Daraa Governorate, and the Mezze Air Base in Damascus. This afternoon, additional strikes were reported at the Mezze Air Base, a major security complex in the Kafr Souza suburb of the capital, a branch of the Scientific Studies and Research Center in Damascus, and a central square in the capital that includes intelligence and customs headquarters. This is from Times of Israel military correspondent Manny Fabian. Following the fall of the Assad regime, the IDF has said that it is tracking advanced weapons in Syria and working to prevent them from reaching Hezbollah or any other hostile elements that could threaten Israel. So yes, this is absolutely working in favor of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, look, after the last 14 months, Israel has a lot on its plate, but it is definitely concerned about what's happening in Syria. And I think this basically they are saying that they are going to seize this buffer zone that has existed between the Golan Heights and occupied Golan Heights and Syria. They're going to seize those positions. And I think ordinarily that would have been seen as hugely provocative, but certainly from Israel's perspective at the moment, it is understandable. I mean,
Someone look up a map of Greater Israel and you will understand which direction people are heading in. Now, if you were to say this, for the record, if you were to say this like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I think that there was more of a reason to be skeptical of that. If someone were to be like, oh, they want to do Greater Israel, they want to do Greater Israel, I'd be like, I don't know about that. Nowadays, I feel like, I mean, look, Euphrates to the Nile. Look at that. This guy is not a random dipshit, okay? I mean, he is a dipshit, but he's not a random dipshit. That is the finance minister of Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, describing the aspirations of Greater Israel. Yes, the Nile River, in between the Nile River and the Euphrates. This is the map of Greater Israel. Sometimes you'll see this patch on soldiers' arms on the Israeli occupying force. It happens to feature most of Syria, half of Iraq, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, parts of Turkey as well. This is what it looks like in terms of the patches. Parts of, obviously, Egypt, too. I believe it's also in the Likud Charter, too. Yeah, also Saudi Arabia to a certain... Saudi Arabia, too. So where does this originate from? I think it originates... I don't know. I mean, it's like the Bible, I think. I don't fucking know. Well, for evangelical Christians, they believe that the Greater Israel, like this land between the Euphrates and the Nile River, belongs to only Jews. And when it is only populated by Jews, the Armageddon will happen. Jesus Christ will come back to Megiddo and fight Satan's forces in Megiddo. And all of the evangelical Christians will be sucked into the heavens. And everyone else that is not a good evangelical Christian will burn in eternal hell. This, of course, includes the Jews that are in between that area. But the trigger event is for them to populate this entire area so that this anime supervillain style fight can happen. Yeah. I think they're mostly focusing on their political capital on northern Gaza as far as settlements go at the moment. Some groups do photo shoots in southern Lebanon and left, but northern Gaza and the Netzadim corridor are where our eyes should aim at right now as far as that goes. Yes. I mean, I think like the reasonable thing, well, it's still unreasonable, but what they will be allowed to do is most likely populate North Gaza. As I have said, as they've shown their interest in bringing in settlers and utilizing the occupied or the currently ethnically cleansed parts of North Gaza and repopulate it with settlers. So they're already doing that.
The wrong hands, and they don't want the rebels operating right on their border. So, you know, look,
this is bullshit. They didn't have rebels operating right in their border as a concern at all before. They literally welcomed it. So the notion that they now have an issue with the rebels operating on the border is bullshit. Here is senior editor of 972 magazine, okay, Ben Reif. With Assad gone, Israeli forces are currently seizing the buffer zone between Syria and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, which has been in place for half a century. The army has also been instructed to occupy control points, while ministers are calling to occupy Mount Hermon. Saudi media is reporting that the Syrian side of Mount Hermon, Jabal al-Shaikh, is now under Israeli control. And there it is. They got the flag out and everything.
Look, Israel is fighting wars in Gaza. The one in Lebanon has only just finished, but it does seem like it's willing to engage with Syria as well. We've just had a note from the IDF warning people in 5 villages in southern Syria to stay indoors for their own safety because Israel could be preparing to make strikes there. Israel has had a very ambiguous relationship with the Syrian regime up until now, and it's one that really indicates the complex web of networks and political allegiances in the region. So for a long time, after the Arab uprising in Syria back in 2011, 2012, Israel basically wanted the status quo. They're no great friend of Bashar al-Assad, but they calculated that a man who was allied with Hezbollah, a man who was allied with Iran, Israel's 2 arguably greatest enemies along with Hamas, they calculated that Bashar al-Assad was better than what might come next. Well, now we've got what's come next, and Israel is going to have to make the calculation of what kind of Syria it wants, and if they don't get the Syria they want, How will they respond?
Syrian rebel commander urges Israel to support uprising, strike Iran-backed forces. In an interview with Tal, a fierce Syrian army officer expresses hope for friendly relations with Jewish state. Warns of Iranian militias propping up Assad. They will come for Israel too. Yeah, anyone that thinks that these guys are going to attack Israel, at least in the next 4 to 5 years, are crazy, in my opinion.